The Elden Ring DLC added some of the strongest throwables to the game, specifically the hefty throwing pots. And the DLC also added a ton of ways to buff your damage, so I thought to myself, what could be the highest possible damage you could achieve with a single pot in Elden Ring? Naturally, I decided to find out by beating every boss in the DLC using just one hefty pot. To make the challenge interesting, I have just one simple rule. The run has to be a true one-shot, which means for bosses with multiple phases, I need to one-shot the entire health bar with just one pot and not each phase separately. This run involved some of the most creative solutions and in-game tech, so I hope you enjoy the video and make sure to subscribe to the channel. I use a lot of damage buffs and talismans from the base game and the DLC throughout this run, so here is a brief explanation of the most common ones, like the Red Feathered Branch Sword, which is a 20% buff at low HP, the Twinbird Kite Shield, which is a 5% buff at low HP, the Howlish Shibiri, which is a 25% buff to all damage, the Jellyfish Shield, which is a 12.5% buff, and the Rallying Standard, which is a 20% buff to all damage. I also use the Lord of Blood's Exaltation Talisman and the White Mask combo, which is a 20% and 10% when a bleed proc happens, and the Kindred of Rot's Exaltation Talisman and the Mushroom Crown combo, which is another 20% and 10% when a poison proc happens. For some of my other important talismans, I'll be using the Companion Jar, which is a 10% buff to hefty pots, and the various Scorpion Charms, which buffs elemental damage by 12%. For the Physic, I'll mostly be using the various Shrouding Crack tiers, which buff the respective elemental damage by 20%. I'll also be using all the new DLC buffs, which I'll explain individually as I acquire them throughout the run. The most important buff the DLC introduced is the Scadutree Blessing, which at the max level of 20 gives you a massive 105% damage buff, so the very first thing I do is collect all the freely available Scadu fragments on the map, and you can actually reach level 14 without beating a single enemy, which gives us a permanent 90% damage buff right off the bat. While on this collection trip, I pick up some hefty crack pots and most importantly, the cookbooks for our hefty pots, like the hefty fire pot, the furnace pot, and the lightning pot, which are available early. Before we fight our first boss, I collect a few more items. First, I head to the Belrod jail where I pick up an extremely important item for this run, the Great Jar Helm, which buffs hefty pots by 17%, but more importantly, the amazing thematic value. Next, I pick up another new DLC buff found in the Bloodfiend Caves, the Sacred Bloody Flesh. This consumable buffs damage by 18% when a bleed proc happens in the vicinity. Next, I head to the ruins of Unte below the Shadowkeep, where we pick up the most overpowered new Crystal Tier dropped by the Sleeping Furnace Golem in front of the ruins, the Bloodsucking Crystal Tier. This tier buffs all damage by 20% at the cost of draining 20 HP per second, which is usually a huge penalty, but since this is a one-shot run, I just have to pray that I hit the boss and get the kill before I succumb to the bloodsucking. After that, I head to the lower section of the Belrod Legacy Dungeon, where I pick up the Poison Hand weapon, which buffs damage by 7.5% when a poison proc happens in the vicinity. After this short collection trip, I upgrade my Scadu level to 14, and then head to our first boss, the Ancient Dragon Man, who's blocking our way to more Scadu fragments and, more importantly, Bale. This boss has 19k HP and is weak to lightning damage, so I decided to use the hefty lightning pot here. After using 9 different buffs, shockingly, I could only manage to hit 11k damage. Here, I had the realization that even though pots are really strong, one-shotting bosses was still gonna be an insanely difficult task. So I go again, and this time I add 6 more buffs to my buff routine and enter the arena with high hopes. I throw the pot just in time before Ancient Dragon Man gets his weapon art off, and with that, he was down. After Ancient Dragon Man, we get access to the Jagged Peak and Karo's Hidden Grave, where I pick up 2 more Scadu fragments and then upgrade to Scadu level 15 before heading to our first major boss of the run, the Putrescent Knight. I choose to come to this boss first because of 2 reasons. 1, because he's the weakest Remembrance boss with only 20k HP, and 2, because he's guarding another really important damage talisman. This boss is weakest to holy damage, but unfortunately there are no hefty holy pots, so I decide to go with the furnace pot instead. I keep my buff routine the same as for Ancient Dragon Man, just to see how much damage I do. Go, and then... pot. Please die. Oh, let's go! Oil who? Get fucked! Thank God this boss is like a fucking piece of shit that like just dies. Once he's done, we pick up another new talisman, the Saint Trina's Smile, which you get from defeating Theolier after talking to Saint Trina a bunch of times and getting invaded by him. This talisman buffs damage by 20% when sleep procs in the vicinity. Next, I pick up the hefty Magic Pot cookbook and head to our next boss, and this time I add the sleep buff to my buff routine, and to proc the sleep, I use a lulling branch which builds up sleep on myself. I also use the Terra Magica spell which buffs magic damage by 22.5%, and after finally casting 17 different buffs, we managed to take down Rakshasa, who drops her armor set, which buffs damage by another 2% for each piece. Next, I head to Jory, who's blocking our way to Midra and some really important items in the Abyssal Woods. The big problem with Jory is that he spawns on the other end of the arena, so most of my buffs expire before I get close to him, so I had to cast all my buffs inside the arena, which is even more problematic because he's always spamming his spells. Initially, hiding behind these gravestones and buffing seemed like a good strategy, but even the gravestones couldn't save me from a stupid spiral attack. After a bit of trial and error, I figured out the most insane solution. I could jump onto this specific gravestone that would raise me above the hitbox of the spirals, but having to do this little maneuver between the buff routine caused some of my buffs to expire, and this miserable boss also has 30,000 HP, so I really needed every single buff. So I decided to go again until my menuing was so fast that my buffs lasted just a little bit longer to allow me to do this. Let's go! Thank God! Oh! Yes! After Jory, I collect a few more items from the Abyssal Woods. First, the Matting Hand dropped by this invader, which raises damage by 7.5% when madness procs in the vicinity. Then, I grab the remaining Skadu fragments in the Abyssal Woods Church and collect another important talisman dropped by these madness enemies who, if you didn't know, can be killed if you parry their staff. And this is how you get the Age One's Exaltation Talisman, which buffs damage by 20% when madness procs in the vicinity. Next, I grab the cookbook for the hefty Frenzied Flame Pot, which is the highest damage pot in the game because it scales on 4 different stats. After that, I head to the Dancing Lion. This boss has only 22k HP, and he's the weakest to fire damage, so I go with the fire setup, and this time I also add the madness buffs to my buff routine. Oh! Oh! Get fucked, bitch. Let's go! I get lucky with the lion having extremely low HP and get it done on the first try. Next, I head to another boss, which is also extremely weak to fire, but this wasn't gonna be as simple. The Scottry Avatar is the only boss who has 3 separate health bars. He only has 7.5k HP in the first phase and 15k in the later 2, and takes double damage on the head, but this wasn't as easy as it looked on paper. I easily take down the first phase as expected, but for the second phase I ran into a little problem. Most of my buffs only last 20 to 30 seconds, and they'd expire before he respawns, but more importantly, the blood-sucking tier would kill me long before I could kill the boss. So the first change I made was removing the blood-sucking tier, and my second idea was to one-shot the first phase before my sleep buff would trigger, so it would proc right after and last long enough for the much tankier second phase. But my buffs would still expire before the third phase, so what now? Well, here it's time to introduce the hefty oil pot, which buffs fire damage by a massive 65%. But I couldn't just directly hit the boss with the oil pot, since that would be against the one-shot rule. But thankfully, I found out that you could just throw the pot on the ground and the splash would still cover the boss in oil as long as it lands close to him. Yes! Let's go! There it is! Fuck yeah! Ugh, another one! Next, I head to the Shadow Keep to take care of the Golden Hippo because we need every single Skadu fragment and he drops 2 of them. This boss has a massive 34k health, but thankfully, he's extremely weak to lightning damage and is in water, which gives us another 10% lightning damage bonus. Unfortunately for the Hippo, our little game of catch didn't go so well because the ball turned out to be explosive. And speaking of playing games, it was time to face the local jousting champion, Commander Geist. This boss also has 34k HP, but unfortunately, he's extremely weak to holy damage, which we don't really have. Even more unfortunate is that Commander Geist gets iframes when he charges. So as much as I'd have loved to just throw a pot and be done with him right as he charged at me, it wasn't an option, and this is where things got really complicated. Not only did I have to dodge his charge, but I also had to make sure all of my buffs would last long enough. Eventually, I figured out that I could get him stuck behind a pillar during this charge attack, which would give me ample time to cast all of my buffs inside the arena. Then, I just had to get out of my hiding spot and throw a pot at him. Oh, shit! Okay, guys, it's doable. Thank God. In case you didn't notice, I actually forget to buff with my jellyfish shield, or he'd have been dead here already. So I go again until I finally get successful in getting him stuck again, and thankfully this time I make sure to cast my jellyfish buff. Yes! Let's go! Please! Let's go! Who needs a career? After Commander Gaius, I pick up the 5 Skadu fragments behind him, which allows me to reach Skadu level 18. Now that we've grown a lot stronger, it was finally time to face all the major bosses that I was saving for later. And first in the list was Rellana. This boss has 30k HP and is also weak to lightning damage, and she's also in water, so damage wasn't really a problem with Rellana. The actual problem was her projectiles, so she'd always kill me before I could hit her, and even worse, she actually dodges my pot like Millennia. This is where I realized it was gonna be a long grind just to land one pot until this happened. Ah! Oh, I did it! Let's go! Let's go! I'm not entirely sure what happened with Rellana there, but she just decided to come running towards me for a hug, but unlucky for her, a lightning bolt struck her on the way. Guess the universe had other plans. Still alive! One-shot king? No, the one-pot king! After Rellana, I head to Romina. This boss has 36k HP, and like every rot-related enemy, she's weakest to fire damage, so it was finally time to unveil the hefty Frenzied Flame pot, which, as I explained earlier, is the highest damage pot in the game. Oh my god, I actually did Romina first try! Finally, it was time for Mesmer. Mesmer has 39k HP and he's weakest to slash damage, but pots don't really do slash damage, so we go with the second biggest weakness, magic damage. Mesmer has two really big issues. First, the door opening animation takes so long that half my buffs expire before it's done, and second, the second time Foggate entrance spawns me so far away from him that it's impossible to land the pot. To solve these problems, I had to come up with the most bizarre solution. If you fast travel to a Grace while opening Mesmer's door, the game buffers the action of teleporting you to the middle of Mesmer's arena until you get closer to his arena again. So, by implementing this weird quirk, I could cast all my buffs after buffering the teleport just outside the close proximity, and then enter the zone which would spawn me close to Mesmer, so I could keep all my buffs and also easily land the pot on him. Once I figured out how to land the pot, another big problem was that my damage just wasn't enough because of his high resistances. To solve that problem, I had another really crazy solution. If I run to the spot where his second phase spawns after the cutscene and land the pot to phase transition him, the lingering hitbox from the explosion would also hit the second phase immediately after the cutscene. Maybe! Maybe, was that? Come on! Come on! Come on, baby! Yes! Let's go! Let's fucking heal! Heal! No, bitch! Ah, let's go! Actual fucking history, man. After taking down Mesmer, I burn the ceiling tree and finally get access to Ainir Ilim. And here, I grab the last few Skadu fragments and finally reach Skadu level 20. And then, it was time for the Lita gank fight, which had its own unique issues. The fact that you have to go through a loading screen means you couldn't keep any of your buffs active, and you don't get much time to buff inside the arena either, because these NPCs never give you any room to do so. But I had a solution for this too. If you use a stealth item like the Lamenting Visage or Assassin's Gambit, you can sit inside the arena without aggroing these NPCs and cast all of your buffs, provided that you keep distracting them by throwing something against the wall. After I was done casting my buffs, while they were having fun staring at the wall, it was time to land the trick shot and kill 2 birds with 1 pot. Let's go! Let's fucking go! There it is! Next, it was time for Matir, who has 42,000 HP and is extremely resistant to every elemental damage type. But before we get to the damage problem, there were other problems to take care of. First, she aggroes from insanely far away and constantly shoots her lasers at me, which made buffing extremely difficult. And for damage, the only way to hit 42,000 damage with her high resistances was to land an oil pot near her for the 65% damage buff. But landing not 1 but 2 pots from so far away was extremely difficult, and I also had to make sure I hit her belly with a frenzied pot because that's her weak spot that takes 50% more damage. So this time, not only did I have to do my menuing at lightning fast speeds so my buffs would last long enough to throw 2 pots, but also have immaculate free aim so that I only land the oil pot next to her and the frenzied pot right on her belly. Finally, after hours of struggle, we achieved this. Oh! Fuck! Wait, I don't think I oiled, did I? I'm an E athlete. Basically the same thing. Oh, let's go! No! Oh, shit, I did it! Holy! Yes! What the? Just like that! Just like that! It is that fucking easy! Once Matir was taken care of, it was time for the toughest 3 bosses of the run, starting with Midra, who has the highest HP in the game at 47k. Even though I did 53k damage to Matir, that wasn't possible here because he didn't have a weak spot like her, and more importantly, you can't land both an oil pot and a frenzied pot before his opening attack kills you. So is this where the one-shot challenge ends? Because clearly I'd run out of any more damage buffs to add. Or had I? Well, actually, there are 2 more mechanics that I could make use of that are special to this boss. First, the Crusade Insignia Talisman, which buffs damage by 15% for 20 seconds when you kill an enemy, which was perfect because I could activate it by killing Mini Midra. And second, the Stealth buff, which buffs damage by 20% if you hit an enemy who is unaware of you. So if I hit the pot on the ground right before the cutscene, the lingering explosion would hit the boss immediately after the cutscene, and the pot would get the 20% stealth damage bonus, because the boss takes a second to aggro to me. So I just had to cast all my buffs, kill Mini Midra to activate the Crusade Insignia buff, and just time the pot right before the cutscene. Simple, right? Please! I think that was it, right? Unless something expired. What? What? Fuck, wait, shit. What the fuck? Was that like too early? Uppercut. That has to hit. That has to fucking hit. That has to fucking hit, man. Come on. Come on, baby. Yes! Oh my god! I killed Midra! Oh my god, let's go! It's fucking real! Holy! Midra was finally down and the run was still alive, and with that, we move on to Bale. Bale has 41,600 HP, and he is also extremely resistant to every elemental damage type. Unlike Midra, I could use an oil pot for Bale on his opening, and after using every single buff I could think of, I throw an oil pot right after he lands, but I only managed to hit Bale for 40k damage, because his head only takes normal damage instead of extra damage like Matir's belly. So once again, I had to think of other solutions to make up for that 1k damage shortage. First, I tried the Soul Cypher weapon skill, which buffs damage by 15% if the enemy walks inside the mist, but that obviously didn't go too well because it takes way too long to cast. Once again, it was proving to be yet another boss who I couldn't one-shot, because unlike Midra, I couldn't use the stealth damage bonus here because there's no cutscene to take advantage of. But what about the Crusade Insignia buff? I happen to remember that just before the final peak outside the arena, there are some innocent sludges lying around. But I couldn't just kill them here and run to the boss because the buff only lasts 20 seconds. So I decide to actually proc Rot on them and then run to the boss while they slowly wither away and die just in time with my buff routine before engaging the boss. Fuck, I threw the rock pot! Oh! Fuck! Wait, that was it! No, I could have done it. I threw the wrong pot. The poor sludge, dude. This is like the worst strat I've ever come up with right now. Oh, I think... Did I hit the oil pot? Did I hit it? I must have hit the oil pot, right? Yeah, I didn't get a headshot. I didn't get a headshot. No! No! Fuck off! Fuck off! I hit him with the oil pot! I hit him with the fucking oil pot! No! Let's fucking go! Let's go! Let's fucking go! That was it, right? Oh my god, the Bale one pot, let's go! Holy shit! And at long last, it was time for Promised Consort Radahn. Radahn has 46,000 HP, and just like Bale, he is highly resistant to every elemental damage type. So first, I try a Frenzied Flame Pod without oil, and it only does 24k damage, still missing a whopping 85% more damage. One option here was to use stealth items like Assassin's Gambit and Unseen Form and enter the arena without aggroing him, which would give me both the 20% stealth bonus and I could easily land the oil pot for the 65% damage bonus. But doing that would have been an extremely boring way to end the run, considering how we've implemented some of the most bizarre solutions and kept the run alive. So I decided against cheesing the boss this way. I just had to figure out how to land an oil pot without stealth, and for the remaining 20%, there was still one more piece left for the puzzle: the Dried Bouquet Talisman. This talisman buffs damage by 20% when a spirit summon dies in the vicinity. So first, I tried the cutscene entrance, and the summons conveniently die as expected, but landing the oil pot was definitely not an option here. So next, I tried the second attempt Foggate entrance. Okay, please work. Bad RNG. Oh! No, no, dude, almost! Fuck, that was almost it! Dude, if he was oil, he'd be dead there. It did look like this method had some potential, so I tried again and again until this happened. No, I oiled him! How? What? How? Dude, how? How did I, dude, I just wanted to try one more time to see if I could do it. How did I oil him there? I don't understand. I don't fucking get it. What just happened? No, it's not break. You can see the rest of the pod go. It didn't break midair. The pod has to land on the rubble. No, I forgot the shield. That was it. Was that not it? I think that was it, right? Or did I not have a talisman? Was that? No, I think I missed a talisman as well. Oh, I unequipped the companion charger. Okay. Yes, the one time I managed to land both the oil pod and the frenzied flame pod, I made the mistake of messing up my buffs, which at this point required robotic precision, considering I was casting 25 plus different buffs. And then began the grind to get the perfect RNG to land the oil pod while making sure to not mess up any buff, and it took 8 long hours to finally reach this moment. Yes! Let's go! Let's fucking go! Yes! Oh! Let's fucking go! Let's go! Oh my god, dude! Oh my god, it only took us nearly 8 hours. Thanks for watching the video, and if you like this one, make sure to check out the previous one-shot video I did with melee only if you haven't already. How many people, any Albanians in chat? How many Albanians? I did it for Albania. How many Albanians? You? There you go. What's the population of Albania?